Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to Build Up team for hosting the webinar. I will be presenting, as Rod said, on the report entitled Energy Transition of the EU Building Stock. This report was designed to contribute to the review of the EU instrument this year. As we know that 2016, the Commission would like to make it the year of delivery. And as we all know, the building sector plays a crucial role in delivering in our climate and energy commitments. I will start with good news. So there is now in Europe an energy renovation market. It's quite new, that's why I say now, because until 2008, the building market was mainly about construction, was first or dominated by the construction of new buildings. Things started changing in 2009, where the construction of new buildings, the share of the market for construction of new buildings has been equal for the first time to the share of the construction of the renovation of existing buildings. What we see in this graph is the market share of the activities. The blue and the green are new buildings, are for new buildings. The yellow and the red are for existing buildings, which means renovation. And then since 2009, we have seen an increase of the share of the market of the renovation of buildings over the share of the market of new buildings. It's 57% since 2009, and there are two main reasons that explains this market shift. The first one is that in 2007 and 8, we had the financial crisis, and member states decided to take action and decided to implement economic recovery measures. And the sector that has been selected for the economy measures in some member states, not all, has been the building sector. But at the same time, when the building sector has been selected, we had adopted, it was just after the adoption of the EU 2020 climate and energy target, and member states where the building sector has been selected for the economy measures, for the economic recovery, have decided to go for the implementation, to support the implementation of energy efficiency measures in the building sector. Today, in 2015, we estimate the energy innovation market at 109 billion for the overall EU 28, with almost 900,000 jobs. But we have to be careful, these jobs are not all new jobs. They are mainly jobs that we would have lost if we didn't had these two policy push. So it is clear that policies are delivering, and the policy intervention that we had, the combined effect of the EU member states policy intervention has led to the emergence of the EU energy innovation market. But then when we look at more in details, what is behind this energy innovation market, or what does it mean actually in terms of renovation, behind the good economic news. So we need to look at what does it mean from energy and carbon reduction perspective. And we can analyze that based, and thanks to the EU instrument, based on the reporting that member states do as required by various EU instruments. And when we think of buildings, we all think, of course, of the Energy Performance Building Directive and its daughter regulation, the cost optimum methodology. While the EPPD has been instrumental for new buildings, especially in member states where we didn't have any requirements in the past, and it has been also very instrumental in shifting the thinking from component perspective to overall performance perspective. And when we compare to at international level, the EU has been the first region where this shift has been made, and quite successfully for new buildings. Unfortunately, when we look at EPPD from the renovation of buildings, of existing buildings, EPPD, the renovation has not been the main objective, it seems, of the EPPD. We know today that the EPPD is not the instrument that triggered this renovation market, and it's not the instrument that could take it forward. The two main provisions in EPPD that could be considered directly related to the renovation are those related to setting minimum energy performance requirement when buildings are renovated. But unfortunately, we have this applies only in case of major renovation. And the way major renovation is defined today actually eliminates most of residential buildings, because major renovation, the requirements apply only if the value of the cost of the renovation is higher than 25% of the renovation of the building, of the value of the building, or if more than 25% of the surface of the building is renovated. We know in the case of the of residential buildings, it's very rarely that more than 25% of the surface is renovated, and we also know from the reporting of member states that most of the measures are measures that leads to shallow renovation, and the cost of these measures is is very low compared to 25% of the value of the buildings. So EPPD cannot be the tool for at least the version that we have for renovation. And then in 2012, we had hope with the Energy Efficiency Directive, because this directive included at least two articles directly related to buildings. Article 4 about the renovation strategies. Article 4, member states reported to the Commission what they are doing in their renovation. So this article allowed us to better understand what's going on and to see where are the best practices to share them among member states. However, the reporting that we have is only about the measures that member states have and already implemented, already in place very often, existing measures, most of them. And so we didn't trigger new measures, and it's not the article that pushes for the renovation. And then we have Article 5 specifically dedicated to public buildings, but unfortunately this article has been, the ambition level on this article has been lowered by member states by including that the renovation, the 3% renovation rate requirement applies only for public buildings owned and occupied by central government. And worse than that, so we have alternative measures. So 2/3 of the member states opted for the alternative measures, and worse than just having alternative measures, among the alternative measures we have behavior change and selling public buildings, the leaky buildings actually. So we know that some member states reported that, behavior change has been successful, has been the preferred option in all member states where the alternative measures have been selected. And then some member states opted for selling their leaky buildings. So basically, the main idea behind Article 5, which is about public authorities leading by example, doesn't work, because if you have public authorities selling leaky building and moving to a building that is highly efficient, this doesn't mean that the leaky building is no longer in the market. So we are just putting in the market leaky buildings. But actually, in the Energy Efficiency Directive, the two articles that could have triggered the renovation market are Article 3 and Article 7, because these two articles are about energy savings, the overall energy savings for each member state. The only issue that we have is that the savings claimed for buildings under Article 3 do not always match with the savings claimed by member states for buildings under Article 7. And under Article 7, the building sector is where member states expect most of the savings, but they don't include so many new measures. So it's based on existing measures. And the other challenge is to understand if the measures claimed under Article 7 are the same, and if they match or not with those under Article 4, the renovation strategies. So we see here that in one single directive, because the requirements are spread under different articles, the reporting is spread, so we cannot really have conclusions and make conclusions and propose way forward and select the best practices. And then The other directive that is important is because in addition to the fact that we need to make our buildings highly energy efficient, then to decarbonize buildings, we need to make sure that the energy consumed is produced by renewables, and buildings could be a center of production of renewables as well. And the Renewable Energy Directive doesn't target buildings specifically, except if we consider the requirement under heating and cooling, and all heating and cooling is consumed by buildings. And in this case, the directive targets directly buildings, but the directive refers, in the case of renovation, to the requirements in EPPD. So we see that if we don't get EPPD right, or the main building directive right, so all other instruments will get it wrong, actually, because the minimum energy requirements are not well designed. And then, of course, when the building envelope is renovated, we need, the next step is to work on the energy systems, actually, mainly those related to heating, cooling, and lighting. Unfortunately, we don't have any instrument targeting systems. There is one requirement on EPPD, but it's unclear how to implement that. And the Eco-Design and Labeling Directive targets some of the components of the systems and not the system. We don't have the requirements for the overall system. And beyond the fact that we don't have requirements anywhere for the overall system, Eco-Design and Labeling Directives suffer from basically the same problems like the ones we discovered about cars as a result of Volkswagen Gate. So the requirements the requirements under eco-design and labeling are not set based on the real consumption. There are tolerances included, and we don't check compliance actually very often. So we don't really know. It's very difficult to assess the real impact of these two directives on reducing the energy consumption of buildings. But actually, the instrument that we are not used to look at as energy efficiency and as a building community more specifically that could trigger the energy renovation are the climate instruments. Why the climate instruments are important, and by climate instrument I mean the EU ETS and ESD, because our climate target is binding, while our energy efficiency target is not binding. So you could have a huge list of measures, but as it's not binding, I don't know what happens exactly when you don't meet something that is indicative. But the climate target is binding. And for buildings, for the direct emissions of buildings, it's the effort-sharing decision. 99% of the direct emissions of buildings are regulated under the effort-sharing decision. But I will come back later with a graph on the effort-sharing decision and some of the loopholes that exist in the effort-sharing decision. And the ETS is also very important because it's one of the instruments that has been designed to finance the decarbonization. And then we have also the internal market regulations. We have two, one for electricity and one for gas. And these two regulations require member states to introduce innovative financing formulas for electricity and gas. And we will see later that the innovation is not going under these two directives in the right direction in most member states. And then we have all what is related to financing energy renovation, to financing not only energy renovation, but financing EU project, like the state aid regulations and the financial framework. So these financing and investment policies, it does happen that sometimes they hinder energy renovation. So, for example, state aid doesn't treat energy renovation and more generally energy efficiency like other investments. So the eligible cost for state aid is, in the case of energy innovation, is between 30 and 50%, while for other infrastructures it could go to 100%. So it's not fair treatment of energy efficiency, and this doesn't match with what the energy strategy for the energy union strategy says about the energy efficiency. financial framework, an important progress has been made in the 2013-2020 structural funds compared to the previous period. More funding are dedicated to energy efficiency, 18 billion in total, and 43% out of these 18 billions are for buildings, and we make a guess that it is for energy renovation. So basically what we see here is that we have at least 14 instruments. We have a little bit more, but I checked what we have here is the list of the instruments where I find that there are provisions that hinder the energy renovation or the ambition of the energy renovation. And in practice, so basically we have everything or almost everything. I don't think something is missing. It's just that they are fragmented, and it's like having a policy diamond, but a diamond that is fragmented. That's why it's difficult to see how this diamond, in the current situation, if it is left like it is, could increase the ambition level. So the fragmentation doesn't help in increasing the ambition level of the energy renovation. Now, if I look at more specifically the instrument that could trigger the energy, the ambition level that we need. So first, the effort sharing decision, which is the instrument where we have the requirement to reduce carbon emissions for non-ETS sectors, and buildings is one of them. So what we see is that the first thing is that our current climate targets are not aligned with the Paris Agreement. Our current target is 40% greenhouse gas emission reduction compared to 1990 if we keep the 27% energy savings target, but this could increase to 45% if we increase the energy savings target to 40%. But most important is that member states have reported to the Commission their projections for buildings under the ESD instruments. And what we see here, the first bar is the member states reporting for 2030. We see that it's higher than any of the Commission projections. The first projection from the Commission, the second bar here, is for 27, if we keep 27% energy savings target. So even with this business as usual objective, the ESD projections from member states are much higher for buildings, so there are inconsistencies. And of course, if we go to the 40%, the last bar, the 40% energy savings target, which is the only one that could give us a hope to be in the Paris path, member states are far away from Paris. It's like they sign on Paris Agreement, but they don't translate this in their national policies. And it's very important to have as first step the projections of member states aligned with those of the European Commission. And then the second instrument that we have from the climate package is the ETS. So ETS has been designed mainly to finance the decarbonization, and member states reported to the Commission how they use their ETS revenues, and then we see that there are discrepancies in the use of ETS revenues for energy innovation. So here we see that France, Hungary, Lithuania, and Malta reported that 100% of their ETS revenues were used for energy innovation in 2014, but you have other countries where it's almost nothing. Italy, it's less than 10%. We don't know exactly how. We don't have too much details actually to understand how ETS revenues are used in other countries and why they are not using them for energy innovation. So it's important to know if we have an EU instrument and it's not used for the energy transition, or at least the building part of it, why, to improve it. So more transparency from member states' perspective would help in improving the EU instruments. And then the third instrument that I would like to highlight is the one related to the internal market regulation. So these instruments required member states to introduce innovative financing formulas for their energy, for electricity and gas. In practice, it means that the taxes, that they have taxes, and the way I understand it from energy efficiency perspective is that the taxes should push us to consume less. in practice, what you see here, select one of the countries, it doesn't matter which one because they are all in a similar situation, then you will see that you have different bands, electricity and gas consumption, and the more you consume, the less you pay taxes. So this means that we are not, as citizens, encouraged to consume less. We are in the opposite situation. We are encouraged to consume more because we will pay less taxes if we consume more on our consumption. But more important is that the highest negative impact of this kind of taxation is the fact that vulnerable citizens will be put in fuel poverty situation. They will be put in fuel poverty situation simply because low income are those who are consuming, who have consumption in the lowest bands. And if you are in the lowest band consumption, this is where you pay more taxes. So we see that we have incoherence between the transposition of the internal market regulation and the overall decarbonization and energy transition objective. So what we have here is that we have this fragmented policy diamond, and actually this fragmented policy diamond, the fragmentation is from the policy theory hinders the ambition level that we need, but in practice this fragmentation matches very well with the fragmentation that we have with the policy services. Here, the second figure that you see is for the Commission, but actually we have exactly the same, and it's even worse in some member states. So everything is fragmented, and then this policy services fragmentation is also matches very well the fragmentation of the industry. And actually, when you are looking to the instruments one by one and the provisions one by one, you could find that each provision actually addresses concern of one of the industries. And what is missing is to address the overall. What is missing is to have a policy design and governance structure that allows to go towards more ambitious energy renovation and to deliver for the EU citizens the renovation that is needed. So we have been through, we have done literature review beyond energy efficiency and beyond energy policies. We have been looking to what exists in other sectors, and we ended with a proposal. Our proposal is based on an existing framework that has been proposed by the OECD. To shift to low carbon infrastructure. So, and the shift has to be in the policy design. And as this year we are working on these policies, we have two options. Option one, which is suboptimal, is that we keep the instrument as they are, and we go instrument by instrument, and we try. We do our best, or the legislator will do his best to address the loopholes that have been identified in each instrument separately, and we'll try to seek for coherence. It will be very hard, and we keep everything as it is. So that's the first option, but this option is suboptimal. The other option is to look to this theoretical framework that has been developed by the OECD for low carbon infrastructure, and we design one single framework aiming to the transformation of the building stock in Europe from being an energy waster to being an energy producer. In this case, this framework should be based on the efficiency first framework, the efficiency first principle, sorry. It's very important to have it based on the efficiency first principle, because the implementation of this principle would mean that we first make our buildings highly energy efficient, so that's the first step, and then energy producers. And we need to make sure that this framework will deliver, and the industry and investors will invest in the energy renovation, in this transformation. We need to have clear carbon and energy savings targets, long-term targets. This will give confidence to industry and investors to invest in the energy renovation and to invest in innovation. That's very important, because this transformation is not going to happen without innovation. And when we speak about innovation, it's not only technological innovation that is needed, but we also need innovation in the governance. In the current context, what I showed, the policy services that are fragmented, that exist at EU, national and local level, the way to overcome this, if we look at the industrial projects, the most important industrial project, so for example, the car industry or the airplane industry, what they did, they were also very fragmented in the past, and then what they did, they introduced in the 80s, in the case of car industry, they introduced the risk management, enterprise risk management methodology, and this risk management methodology requires that we to set central function to facilitate the implementation of projects. And this is why we propose the energy renovation facilitator. This doesn't exist anywhere for the time being. What exists at member state level are energy advisors, and if we look at, for example, a country like France, which is quite centralized country, so in France there is an energy advisor hub, and then you have this hub, you have local representation in each city. But what exists today is just to provide information, and what we call for in this paradigm shift is a facilitator to identify the risks, all the risks, to categorize the risk, and to organize, to assign the risk to the most appropriate policy service, actually. So this is completely new, doesn't exist. And then, of course, in addition to the fact that we need to organize the demand and the supply, we also need to have supply the finance part. An important progress has been made in this perspective in the last 2 or 3 years, and the EU is more and more combining EU EIB fund with national ones for de-risking the energy transition, and more specifically the energy renovation. And it's important because this is the way to lower the financial cost of the energy renovation. But if we have only the financial de-risking without having the admin de-risking, so we will not go that far. And there is also innovation to be made from the industry side. So it's not just in terms of policy design and policy organization, but it's also for industry to innovate in the way they work together. And today, the energy innovation that we have is component-based, so each industry is putting in place its product, but we don't have an energy renovation industry, and this is what we need, actually. And we need this energy renovation industry. We need to find a way to have this energy innovation industry, because to be able to scale up, we cannot continue renovating based on component by component, because by renovating component by component, the cost is very high for the EU citizens, so we are increasing the cost of the renovation, and we are not innovating. We are just doing business as usual, replacing one window with more efficient one or with a smart one, adding some smart tools, and putting a bit of insulation. This is something that we know how to do since years, and maybe centuries for some product. To innovate in terms of product, technological innovation, and to integrate the building stock to the EU energy system, and to take advantage of all the new technologies that we have, we really need industry to go for industrialization of energy renovation, and we need to have clear target in this industrialization. The net zero energy renovation is the target to keep in mind, because first, from consumer perspective, this is the only one that would empower the consumer and get rid of fuel poverty. Second, this is the target that requires technological innovation, but also new business models, and we have seen this with the Energy Sprong in Netherlands now. And these energy renovation kits should be developed for each construction, for each building type, construction period, and climate zones. So there is a lot of innovation work that could that an ambitious energy renovation project could trigger. And when we are thinking about energy renovation, we should think about it like one of our successful industrial projects. First, as an industrial project, and then we need to look at our successful stories. And I selected for you, for example, one of the easiest successful stories is the Airbus 380, successful from industrial perspective, and clear target that was building the A380, so clear objective. And in our case, the objective should be net zero energy buildings each time building is renovated, and zero energy and zero carbon building stock by 2050. So to be able to build the A380, Airbus Group, they first thought that they just have to include it in the other project, one of their projects, and then they realized very quickly that it doesn't work. And with the risk management tool, they found out that they needed to have a central function, so they created Airbus 380 company. Similarly, if we compare to the renovation project, so we will need this energy renovation facilitator that would play the role that the Airbus company played to build the Airbus 380. So no mitigation, no direct mitigation of any risk by this facilitator, but the facilitator will identify the risk, assign them to the right risk owners, and categorize them. And then, of course, you need to finance the renovation. Similarly, they needed to finance the A380, so they did set one organization in charge of financing the project. And in our case, we need this risk-sharing pool. And as I said, progress has been made, but it's not all the projects are yet financed in this way. And then, of course, we need engineering, and this is where, if you compare to buildings, so we have our engineering and architecture firms to innovate on the solutions that are needed to build the energy renovation kits. And then, of course, we have the industry that will put the structure together, that will renovate, and this is where we need to have an EU energy renovation industry that we still don't have. I leave you with this, and I let to dream about making the NZEB concept, the net zero energy building concept, flying, as we made the A380 flying. Thank you for your attention. I give the floor to Rod.